For so many of us in the European film industry, getting Eurimages patronage is the absolute gold standard. But how do you actually do it? How do you secure their official backing? Well, it's way more than just filling out paperwork. So today what we're going to do is break down the official guidelines and turn them into a powerful, actionable playbook, one that's designed to get you that seal of approval. First things first, you've got to understand what you're really going after. Seeing this logo on a project is about so much more than just branding. It's a really powerful seal of approval, a mark of true European cinematic excellence. It tells partners, funders, and audiences all across the continent that your project has credibility and quality. So think of it this way. It's a non-financial asset, sure, but its value? Absolutely immeasurable. All right, here's the game plan for today. We're going to talk about what that seal of approval truly means, get into the critical difference between patronage and sponsorship, super important. Then we'll cover the core criteria they're looking for. I'll give you a winning application checklist. And finally, we'll walk through the decision process itself. So let's dive right in. So let's start with the big question. Why does this actually matter? Look, securing Eurimages patronage isn't just a nice little feather in your cap. You have to see it as a core strategic tool. It's something that will seriously enhance your project's visibility and legitimacy in what we all know is a very, very crowded European market. And probably the single most important thing to get straight from the get-go is this. Patronage is non-financial support. I'm going to say that again. It's non-financial. We're not talking about a grant or some kind of cash prize here. What it is an official endorsement. It's them lending their prestigious name and stellar reputation to your event or your activity. Okay, and that brings us to a really critical distinction. Getting your head around the difference between patronage and sponsorship is frankly the very first step in your application strategy. It manages your expectations, and it tells you exactly what kind of paperwork you need to prepare. Let's break patronage down a little bit more. So it means you get to put the Eurimages name and that coveted logo on all your communications. That right there is a massive credibility booster. But, and this is a big but, it can also mean getting in-kind support. Like having someone from the Eurimages team actually come to your event, maybe as a speaker or a juror, and that adds incredible direct value. And here's where the line is drawn in the sand. Patronage is all about endorsement. Sponsorship, on the other hand, is a direct ask for money. And that one little difference triggers a huge change in your application. For sponsorship, you absolutely have to include a detailed budget and a financing plan. For patronage, you don't. So, for sponsorship, you'd need to show, for example, exactly how their potential €5,000 contribution would be used, maybe to cover travel costs for emerging filmmakers. And you'd have to show how that fits into your, say, €50,000 total budget, which is already 80% locked in. Knowing which path you're on from the start is absolutely everything. All right, so you see how this is all building on itself? We know what patronage is, we know how it's different from sponsorship, but how do you actually get it? Well, this next part is all about decoding their scorecard. If you want to build a winning application, you have to learn to think like a board member. You need to know precisely what they're looking for. So, as we walk through these criteria, I want you to do something for me. I want you to ask yourself this exact question about your own project. Don't just sit there and listen. Actively evaluate what you're doing. Does your film festival, your co-production market, whatever it is, does it truly align with what the fund actually values? These 5 points, this is your Bible. 1. Your activity has to be compatible with their core objectives, promoting European co-production. 2, it's got to be relevant to their current strategies. 3, it has to clearly boost their visibility. Remember, this is a partnership. 4, it must be international in nature. That's a deal breaker. And 5, and I really want you to pay close attention here, your track record on promoting gender equality. This is not just some box-ticking exercise. It's a huge indicator of shared values, and you better be ready to prove it with hard data. You have to show them, not just tell them. Can you point to a 50-50 gender split in your selection committee? Have you programmed a majority of films directed by women? These are the concrete, specific metrics they're looking for. Okay, so we've analyzed the criteria, now let's get tactical. This section is the strategic heart of this whole explainer. We're going to take what seems like a boring administrative task and turn it into a compelling, persuasive pitch. This is your checklist for building an application that doesn't just tick the boxes, it really stands out from the crowd. Right, here are your action items. Number 1, the detailed description. Don't just write a paragraph. Paint a vivid picture. Keep it structured, use clear headings, maybe even pop in a simple infographic to make your goals super easy to digest. 2, connect the dots for them. Don't make them guess. Show them exactly how your project helps their mission. 3. Your professional bio. This is where you prove that you and your team have the chops to pull this off. And 4, just to hammer it home, only include a budget if you are seeking sponsorship. You know what? This is the perfect time to just take a second. Seriously, go ahead and bookmark this step for later. Look at the project description you have right now. Does that link to the Eurimages mission? Promoting European co-production and diversity? Does it just jump right off the page? If it's not screamingly obvious, you need to go back and rewrite it. Now let me give you a vital pro tip here. This little line, it's kind of tucked away in the guidelines, but you should read it as a warning. See, while they can ask you for more information, you really don't want them to have to. A request for more info just means delays, and it signals that your application wasn't complete. Your goal should be to be so thorough, so crystal clear, that they have 0 questions left to ask. So, you've done it. You've built the perfect application, you've checked it a million times, and you finally hit submit. What happens now? Well, this final section is all about demystifying that black box and managing your expectations from the moment they get your application to the final notification. So your application goes on a bit of a journey. First, it lands with the fund's secretariat. They do the initial assessment. Then they make a recommendation up to the board of management, and it's the board that makes the final call, based on all those criteria we just talked about. And then finally, you'll get the official word, either by email or letter. And before we wrap this up, let me leave you with one last crucial piece of wisdom, and this comes straight from the source. You cannot rest on your laurels. It doesn't matter if you've received patronage for the last 5 years straight. Every single new application is judged entirely on its own merits. Every submission has to be just as strong and just as strategically aligned as your very first one was. So there you have it. That's the playbook. It's about so much more than just having a fantastic project. It's about being able to prove its strategic value and its deep alignment with the core mission of Eurimages. You now have the criteria, you've got the checklist, and you have insight into the whole process. The only question left is the one you see right here. Is your project ready?